You know, I've always loved the noise of a busy office floor. For 45 years, that hum, the ringing phones, the tapping keyboards, the low rumble of serious conversations, that was my symphony. It was the sound of progress, the sound of money being made, and the sound of a career I built, brick by hard-won brick. Before I go on, if stories about work, power, and what happens when the world moves on without you resonate with you, take a moment to like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who might feel the same. Anyway, over the last few years, the music started to change. It got louder, yes, but it also got shallower. It got younger, and frankly, a whole lot dumber. My name is Evelyn Harper. I'm 67 years old, and until recently, I was the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Omnicorp. That's a fancy way of saying I was the person they called when a deal was dying. Or when a major client, the kind who remembers the days before email, needed hand-holding. I knew our business inside and out, stretching back to the Reagan administration. I was an institution, or at least, that's what the employees who still remembered the 90s used to say. The problem with being an institution is that eventually, the new management wants to tear down the old building and put up a glass tower filled with beanbag chairs and kombucha taps. My biggest headache. The living embodiment of that glass tower was Tyler. Tyler was 29 years old, looked like he was still asking his mom for lunch money, and had the attention span of a hummingbird. He was the new CEO's nephew, you know the story, and he'd been parachuted in as my direct supervisor 6 months earlier. His actual job title was Chief Innovation and Culture Officer, which mostly meant he spent his days trying to figure out how to make spreadsheets look vibrant and insisting that we all use company hashtags. Tyler didn't believe in work. He believed in vibes and engagement. And because he was obsessed with optics, everything had to be documented, filmed, and broadcast live to the corporate Instagram account at Omnicorp Vibes. I tried to ignore him. I really did. I kept my head down, focused on my 9-figure deals, and generally pretended that the guy wearing sneakers with his suit was just a very tall intern who got lost on the way to the cafeteria. But on December 14th, he made it impossible to ignore him. December 14th was my 67th birthday. I wasn't looking for a party. I wasn't looking for cake. I just wanted to get through my budget reviews and maybe grab a quiet, early dinner with my daughter and my granddaughter, Jasmine. I woke up early, feeling that familiar mix of pride and fatigue that comes with a milestone birthday. I wore my favorite suit, a deep sapphire blue, and I spent extra time on my hair. Now, my hair is naturally coily, tight curls, beautiful and strong. But for decades, I felt the pressure to conform, to look polished, to look corporate. So, like I do when I have a major meeting or presentation, I had spent the previous evening straightening it until it was sleek and straight, sitting just above my shoulders. It was a lot of effort, but sometimes you just want to walk into the room and feel untouchable. I arrived at the office by 7:30 a.m., hoping to sneak in before the corporate circus started. But the email arrived at 7:31 a.m. Subject: Mandatory all-hands culture. Connect, celebrating milestones. The text, written in all caps, of course, announced a mandatory meeting at 9 a.m. sharp in the main conference room. Get ready for some serious Omnicorp vibes, it ended, with 3 sparkling emoji. My stomach dropped. I knew what that meant. Tyler sniffing around for content. I walked into the conference room exactly at 9 a.m. It was worse than I imagined. The room was usually dim and serious, designed for mergers and acquisitions. Today, it was bathed in the harsh, unforgiving glare of professional studio lighting. Tyler was standing by the main screen, not with a presentation slide, but with a massive ring light and his personal cell phone set up on a tripod. He was streaming live, clearly visible on the screen, to the hundreds of people who followed the company account. "Morning, team, morning, Omnicorp Nation," Tyler shouted, his voice echoing too loudly in the small space. He was wearing a tie-dye t-shirt under his blazer. I swear, we are live on Instagram. Give us some likes. Give us some fire emojis. I found an empty seat near the back, hoping to melt into the background. No such luck. Tyler's eyes, magnified by the ring light, scanned the room until they locked onto mine. "Ah, Evelyn Harper, the legend herself!" he boomed. Everyone turned to look at me. I offered a tight, professional smile that didn't reach my eyes. I could feel the heat rising in my face. I hated being put on the spot, especially by him. "Now, Evelyn, we have a very special announcement for you today," Tyler continued, walking toward me, holding the microphone awkwardly in one hand and making sure his face was always perfectly centered in the phone camera with the other. Today, December 14th, marks a huge milestone for our organization. Not only are we closing out Q4, but we are celebrating the 67th birthday of one of our most seasoned executives. He paused for applause, which was weak and awkward. Most of the younger staff looked horrified for me. They knew where this was going. "Evelyn, happy 67th, he shouted again, leaning in, forcing me to lean away slightly. "You know what 67 means around here, folks." My heart was pounding. I knew I needed to laugh it off, play the good sport, the wise elder. I tried to prepare a witty retort about being vintage, but Tyler didn't wait. He didn't want a witty retort. He wanted a punchline. He looked straight into the camera, tilting his head dramatically. "It means we're celebrating museum years." A few nervous titters rippled through the room. Tyler beamed, clearly pleased with his corporate comedy gold. Museum years, because Evelyn is a relic, a beautiful, well-preserved relic of the past. We keep her around to remind us how things used to be done, right, Evelyn? The joke landed like a lead balloon, but the damage was done. Museum years. Just like that, in front of the entire company, and God knows how many clients and competitors following the corporate feed, my lifetime of dedication was reduced to an exhibit you look at through a velvet rope. I managed a weak, shaky smile. "That's right, Tyler," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm here to remind everyone that some things, like experience and quarterly profits, never go out of style. I thought that would be the end of it, a nasty ageist jab, but something I could file away under reasons I hate Tyler. But Tyler wasn't finished being Tyler. He hadn't maximized the engagement yet. He stepped back and looked me up and down. His expression shifted from mocking joviality to something more critical, more focused. He was looking at my hair. "Now, let's talk about presentation," he said, turning his attention entirely to my appearance. "Because, Evelyn, you're usually rocking that, what do you call that style, that big, round, natural look." He made a gesture with his hands, mimicking the shape of my natural, coily hair, a gesture that was clearly meant to imply something wild, unruly, or unkempt. I froze. This wasn't just ageism anymore. This was personal, and it was racial. My natural hair was a part of my identity, a part of my blackness that I had often hidden or altered to survive in the corporate world, and now he was mocking the very texture of it. "I call it my natural hair, Tyler," I replied, my voice tightening. "Right? Natural," he chirped, nodding enthusiastically. But the look in his eyes was anything but respectful. "But look at you today. You've gone sleek, streamlined, very sharp, very corporate." He leaned back into the camera, his face filling the frame on the main screen. He pointed his finger directly at me, holding the pose for the live feed. "Now, Evelyn," he demanded, his voice dropping slightly into a tone of false intimacy, as if he were sharing a profound insight with his audience. "For the camera, tell us why you decided to ditch the fluff today. Was this a strategic move for the end of the year? Are we finally embracing the straight edge, Because we love the transformation. It's giving us serious CEO vibes. The room went absolutely silent. You could hear the fluorescent lights buzzing. I felt the blood drain from my face. Fluff. He called my beautiful, natural hair fluff. And he implied that I could only be taken seriously, that I could only have CEO vibes when I chemically or thermally altered my appearance to look more acceptable, more white. My eyes started stinging. 67 years old, 45 years in the game. I had managed hostile takeovers, negotiated multi-billion-dollar deals across 3 continents, and survived 5 different CEOs. And here I was, being publicly ridiculed by a boy half my age, on my birthday, on a social media platform, for the texture of my hair. The humiliation was complete, immediate, and overwhelming. I could feel the tears pushing against the back of my eyes. I refused to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of Tyler, and certainly not in front of the camera, giving him the reaction he so desperately wanted. I took a deep breath, trying to summon the professionalism that had been my shield for decades. "Tyler," I said, my voice dangerously low, "my hair is straightened today because I chose to style it this way. It has absolutely nothing to do with corporate strategy or Q4 profits. Now, if we're done with the personal commentary, I have a presentation on the Asia-Pacific forecast that I believe is far more relevant to Omnicorp's vibes than my hairstyle." I tried to pivot, pulling out my laptop, signaling that the conversation was over. But Tyler was buzzing with the attention. He was already checking the comments streaming onto his phone screen. Wait, hold on, Evelyn. The comments are loving this," he chirped, oblivious to the icy atmosphere he had created. "Someone just asked if you use industrial-strength relaxer or if you use a flat iron. Tell us your secrets, Evelyn. The people need to know your beauty regime." That was it. The final crushing blow, the sheer invasion of privacy, the mockery, the persistent focus on my race and age when my professional accomplishments were what should have been celebrated. I felt something snap inside me. I couldn't speak. If I opened my mouth, I knew I would scream. Or worse, I would start sobbing right there on camera. I stood up, gripping the edge of the conference table so hard my knuckles turned white. "Excuse me," I mumbled, not looking at Tyler, not looking at the camera. "I need a moment." I turned and walked as quickly and as steadily as I could out of that brightly lit room, past the stunned faces of my colleagues. I heard Tyler's voice fading behind me, still chattering into his phone. "Looks like Evelyn needs a coffee refill. Stay tuned. Omnicorp Nation. More vibes coming soon." I didn't stop until I reached the executive restroom on the 48th floor. It was a private, single-stall room, meant only for the senior staff. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and leaned against the cool tile wall. The tears came instantly. They weren't the quiet, dignified tears of an older woman dealing with stress. They were ugly, racking sobs that shook my entire body. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, burying my face in my hands, trying to muffle the sound so nobody outside could hear. 67 years old. I had earned the right to respect, to dignity, to peace, and in 5 minutes, some child had stripped it all away, broadcasting my humiliation to the world. I sat there, on the cold floor, letting the shame wash over me. I felt exposed, small, and utterly defeated. The feeling wasn't just anger. It was a profound, gut-wrenching sadness that I had spent 40 years proving my worth, only to be reduced to fluff and museum years the moment the camera turned on. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, my fingers shaking. I didn't know why, but I needed to see it. I needed to confirm the nightmare was real. I opened the Omnicorp Instagram account. The live was still running, but Tyler had moved on to talking about Q4 targets. The comments, however, were still scrolling rapidly. I couldn't read them all, but the few I caught were enough. At user 44, laughing out loud, museum years is great. At client guy, Why is he talking about her hair? So unprofessional. At Vibes Master. She looks much better straight. Facts. I quickly closed the app, the screen blurring through my tears. I couldn't bear it. I needed to call someone. I needed comfort, validation. I scrolled past my daughter's number and stopped on the one I knew would answer immediately and without judgment. Jasmine. My granddaughter. Jasmine is 24, sharp as a tack, and works in digital media down in Atlanta. She is, as she would say, woke, and she understands this new digital world that had just swallowed me whole. I hit the call button, trying to steady my breath. "Grandma? What's wrong? You sound like you're crying," Jasmine answered immediately. Her voice laced with instant concern. I couldn't hold back the truth. "Jasmine," I choked out, Tyler just humiliated me. He put me on the company Instagram Live and called my birthday museum years. And then he called my hair fluff and asked why I wasn't wearing it natural today. He said I looked more corporate this way. There was a moment of silence on the line, a profound, dangerous quiet. Then Jasmine's voice came back, low and fierce. "He did what? Grandma, are you serious? That racist, ageist little creep put that on video?" "Yes," I whispered, wiping the tears away with the back of my hand. "It was live. Everyone saw it. Everyone." Okay. Take a breath, Grandma," Jasmine instructed, her professional crisis management voice kicking in. "Where are you right now? Are you still in the office?" "I'm in the executive restroom. I can't go back out there. I can't face them." "Don't you dare go back out there," she said firmly. "Listen to me, Evelyn Harper. This is not your shame. This is his liability. He just committed a massive HR violation, probably several, and he did it on a public EU corporate channel. That video is still up, right?" "I think so. It was live," I confirmed. "All right, this is what we're going to do. I need you to pack your things immediately and leave the building. Do not talk to anyone. Do not answer any questions. You are going home. Call your lawyer from the car. And while you're doing that, I'm going to find that video." "Jasmine, what are you planning?" I asked, my voice still shaky, but a tiny flicker of professional curiosity returning. "I'm planning to remind Tyler that in the digital age, you don't get to shame a powerful black woman in public and think you'll get away with it," she stated simply. "Go home. Grandma, get ready to fight fire with fire, and don't worry about the tears. They're just fuel now." I hung up the phone, feeling slightly steadier. Jasmine's energy was infectious, even across state lines. She was right. This wasn't just a bad day. This was an incident. A documented, broadcasted incident. I stood up, straightened my sapphire suit, and looked at myself in the mirror. My face was blotchy and red, but beneath the sadness, a cold, hard anger was starting to form. I looked down at my sleek, straightened hair. Tyler wanted me to be streamlined and corporate. Fine, but he was about to learn that the most dangerous thing in the world is a streamlined, corporate VP who has nothing left to lose. I walked out of the restroom, not looking left or right, grabbed my briefcase from my office, and walked straight past the conference room door. I could still hear Tyler's voice echoing inside, talking about optimizing workflows. He had no idea that the workflow he had just optimized was his own path straight out the door. But I needed proof. I needed the video. And for that, I had to trust my granddaughter. I got into my car and pulled out of the parking garage, dialing my employment lawyer as soon as I hit the street. The fight was on, and I was finally ready to stop being the museum years relic and start being the woman who closes the deal, even if the deal was Tyler's career. The drive home was a blur of blue lights and stop signs that I barely registered. I was operating on pure adrenaline and Jasmine's instructions. Go home. Call your lawyer. I had dialed Arthur Vance, my employment lawyer, before I even merged onto the freeway. Arthur is a man who deals exclusively in highly sensitive, high-stakes corporate disputes, the kind where the numbers are large and the reputations are fragile. He's also known for being completely unflappable, which was exactly what I needed right then. Evelyn, happy birthday. I hope this call isn't about the early retirement package we discussed last quarter, Arthur said, his voice dry and professional. Arthur, it's about a hostile work environment, ageism, and racial discrimination. All broadcast live on the corporate Instagram feed, I stated, trying to keep my voice flat and factual, like I was discussing a Q3 budget shortfall instead of the wreckage of my dignity. I laid out the whole scene, leaving nothing out: the mandatory meeting, the ring light, the museum years joke, and the specific vicious commentary on my hair, calling it fluff and implying I needed to look corporate, read white, to be respected. Arthur listened, completely silent. When I finished, the only sound was the faint static of the Bluetooth connection. "Evelyn," he finally said, his tone dropping several degrees into serious concern. "I need you to confirm something for me. Did he use the corporate social media channel for this? Did he do this in his capacity as a Chief Innovation and Culture Officer?" Yes. It was the official Omnicorp Vibes account. He was talking directly into the camera, naming me, standing in the main conference room. It was an official, mandatory event. He just handed us the case, Evelyn, on a silver platter. Arthur sighed, but there was a sharp edge of professional satisfaction in his voice. This isn't a locker room joke. This is a documented, publicly broadcasted violation of every diversity and inclusion policy Omnicorp has ever pretended to uphold. It's also a clear violation of the Crown Act principles. Even if the legal standard varies state by state, the ageism alone is enough, but adding the racial component regarding your hair texture, that is catastrophic liability for Omnicorp. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. So, what do I do now? You do nothing, absolutely nothing, professionally speaking, Arthur instructed. Do not answer work emails. Do not take calls from HR. Do not resign. Do not apologize. You are officially on medical leave. Effective immediately, I will send the notice to HR myself. We need to let the fire burn for a little bit, and we need to secure the evidence. Does the video still exist? My granddaughter, Jasmine, is working on that right now. She's the digital expert, I told him. Excellent. Secure the video, secure the comments. We need everything. I'm starting the documentation process on my end. Evelyn, you were humiliated, and you have every right to be furious. But right now, you need to be cold, calculated, and quiet. Go home and rest. We'll talk again this evening. Hanging up with Arthur was like having a heavy lead weight lifted off my shoulders. The anger was still there, a hot coal in my stomach, but the paralyzing shame had begun to recede, replaced by the steely resolve of a woman who knows how to fight a corporate battle. Tyler had made a strategic mistake, and I, Evelyn Harper, was the strategist who was going to exploit it. When I finally pulled into the driveway of my quiet suburban home in Connecticut, the house felt like a sanctuary. I walked straight into the kitchen, kicked off my heels, and poured myself a tall glass of iced tea. I sat down at my kitchen table, the sapphire blue suit feeling heavy and restrictive. For years, I had worn that suit, or one just like it, as armor. I had straightened my hair, muted my personality, and perfected the art of the unreadable professional expression, all to survive in rooms where I was often the only woman, and almost always the only black person. I had done it so that my competence would be seen first, my color and my age second. And Tyler, this little boy, had walked in and ripped the armor off in front of the world, exposing the very things I had worked so hard to protect. I closed my eyes. The word fluff echoed in my mind. It wasn't just about the texture. It was about the implication that my natural self was unprofessional, unserious, and messy, It was the ultimate microaggression blown up into a macro humiliation. I was startled by the sudden buzzing of my phone. It was Jasmine, calling via video chat. I accepted the call. She was sitting in her bright, minimalist apartment in Atlanta, her own beautiful, tight curls framing her face. "Grandma, are you home? Are you safe?" she asked, her eyes serious. "I'm home, sweetheart. Arthur is handling the legal side. What about the video?" Jasmine grinned, a sharp, confident flash that reminded me exactly whose granddaughter she was. "Oh, the video is secured. Tyler is an idiot, but he's a predictable idiot. He didn't delete the live immediately because he was too busy basking in his own alleged vibes. I screen recorded the entire thing, but before he could pull it down, 3 different corporate watchdog accounts and a major news aggregator had already ripped copies and posted snippets. My breath hitched. It's already out. It's not just out, Grandma. It's trending. Within an hour of you walking out, the clip of him calling you museum years, and then focusing on your hair, that specific 45-second segment, it went viral. People are furious. I mean, genuinely, white-hot, corporate-shaming furious. "Who is seeing it?" I whispered, feeling the fear return. Everyone. Clients, competitors, journalists. The comments on the reposts are brutal. Not against you, Grandma, but against Tyler and Omnicorp. People are using the hashtag Museum Years and Evelyn Harper to talk about corporate ageism and racism. They are calling for his job. He crossed a line that even the most oblivious corporate social media manager knows not to cross. A strange feeling washed over me. Not shame, but power. Tyler had tried to use the new digital world to humiliate me, but the digital world was turning on him, protecting the very relic he thought he could discard. "So, what's the next step, Jasmine?" "Arthur said I need to be quiet, but that feels like losing," I said, leaning forward. Jasmine nodded slowly. "Oh, Arthur is right on the legal side. You need to be quiet to Omnicorp, but you absolutely cannot be quiet to the public. You have to control the narrative, Grandma. Right now, you are a victim. We need to turn you into a victor." She paused, looking directly into the camera, her media strategist brain fully engaged. "We are going to film a response video. Tonight. We are not going to sue them in court first. We are going to shame them on the internet first. We need to hit them where it hurts, their brand integrity and their stock price." A response video? Me? On social media? I felt a tremor of hesitation. I was a VP of Strategic Partnerships, not a TikTok star. "Yes, you, but not an angry rant. We are going to give them grace, dignity, and a truth bomb they won't forget. We need to leverage the professional presence you have spent 40 years building. But we need to show the vulnerability of the woman Tyler tried to break." What do I say? "I've written a framework. But first," Jasmine said, her eyes scanning my appearance on the screen, "we need to fix your hair." I touched my sleek, straight hair self-consciously. "I just spent 2 hours on this yesterday, Jasmine." "I know, Grandma, and it's beautiful. But Tyler called your natural hair fluff. We are going to film this video with your hair natural, untreated, unaltered. You are going to look into that camera and show the world that this is the hair of a multi-million-dollar deal closer, a VP, and a woman who cannot be defined by his racist standards of corporate appearance." The suggestion hit me with the force of revelation. It was the perfect, silent rebuttal. My natural hair, the style I usually reserved for vacations or family gatherings, would be my shield and my statement. It was my truth. "Okay," I said, a new resolve hardening my voice. "Tell me what I need to do." Jasmine immediately became the director. "First, you need to wash that straightening out. We need those beautiful curls to breathe. Second, location. We need to film this in your office or somewhere equally professional, but with soft, warm lighting. Not the harsh, unforgiving glare Tyler used. We want warmth and authenticity. I spent the next hour in my bathroom, scrubbing and conditioning my hair, working the deep sapphire suit off, and changing into a simple but elegant cream-colored blouse and a black skirt. As the water washed away the chemical treatment, I felt the tightness in my scalp loosen, and with it, the tightness in my chest. When I looked in the mirror, my coily hair was starting to spring back to life, strong and defiant. I felt like myself again, my true self. Jasmine stayed on the line while I set up my home office. "We are not using Tyler's cheap ring light, Grandma. We are using natural light and lamps. We want people to trust you. Now, let's talk script." The script was simple, powerful, and utterly devastating. Jasmine had structured it into 3 acts: acknowledge, educate, and conclude. You start by thanking everyone for the birthday wishes, acknowledging the incident without naming Tyler directly, which keeps you above the fray legally, Jasmine explained. Then, you pivot. You don't make it about you, Evelyn Harper. You make it about every Black woman, every older employee, every person who has been told they need to shrink themselves to fit into a corporate box. I read the outline she sent over, and tears welled up again. But this time, they were tears of recognition, not pain. On museum years. You talk about the value of experience, the wisdom that comes with age, and how reducing a career to an exhibit is dismissing decades of competence. On fluff. You talk about the strength and beauty of natural black hair, and how professionalism is defined by performance, not by proximity to whiteness. The conclusion, a call to action for Omnicorp to reflect on their actual corporate culture, not their vibes. This is perfect, Jasmine. This is exactly what I needed to say, I told her, my voice strong again. Good. Now, we need to film this in one take, no cuts. Authenticity is key. You are talking to your peers, to the young people who look up to you, and to the shareholders who are watching their investment sink because of a 29-year-old idiot, Jasmine coached. Look directly into the lens. Show them the VP. Show them the grandmother. Show them the survivor. We spent another hour rehearsing the tone. I practiced letting the anger show, but channeling it into measured, authoritative statements. It wasn't about being vindictive, it was about being unimpeachable. Finally, the light was right. The afternoon sun was streaming softly through my office window. My hair was fully dry, framing my face in a defiant, beautiful halo. I looked like Evelyn Harper, the woman who had built her career not by conforming, but by enduring. I sat down at my mahogany desk, my phone propped up on a small stack of books, ready to record. Jasmine was watching on her laptop, ready to press the record button remotely. "Remember, Grandma," Jasmine said softly. "You don't need to prove your worth to him. You just need to document his failure." I nodded, took a deep breath, and gave the signal. The red light on my screen blinked on. "Hello, Omnicorp Nation, and everyone else who might be tuning in," I began, my voice clear and steady, the years of boardroom presentations kicking in. "My name is Evelyn Harper, and today, December 14th, is my 67th birthday." I paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. I wasn't expecting a party today. I was expecting to close out Q4 and focus on our Asia-Pacific strategy. Instead, I spent part of my morning in the executive restroom, crying, after my direct supervisor decided to use a corporate Instagram live stream to publicly humiliate me. I spoke about the shame, the shock, and the confusion of being reduced to a punchline. I addressed the museum years jab head-on. I have been told that I am a relic, kept around to remind people how things used to be done. Let me remind you all, how things used to be done is how we built this company. How things used to be done is called experience. It's called institutional knowledge, and it's called competence. My voice gained strength as I spoke, the words flowing out, not from a script, but from 40 years of suppressed truth. Then, I shifted the focus to the most painful part, the hair. I reached up and gently touched my natural curls. My supervisor was particularly focused on my appearance today. He called my natural hair fluff and implied that the only way I could achieve CEO vibes was by altering my hair to look streamlined and corporate. I looked straight into the camera, my eyes unwavering. Let me be perfectly clear. My hair is not fluff. It is beautiful. It is strong. It is professional. And for any corporation, including Omnicorp, to suggest that a woman, particularly a black woman, must chemically alter her appearance to be taken seriously, that is not innovation. That is institutional racism, pure and simple. I spoke for exactly 3 minutes and 45 seconds. It was concise, dignified, and utterly devastating. I didn't raise my voice once, but the quiet intensity held more power than any shout. When I finished, Jasmine immediately stopped the recording. "Grandma, that was perfect. Absolutely perfect," she breathed, sounding awestruck. "Now, we upload. We are going to post this on my personal channel first. Then we're going to blast it across every platform, tagging every major media outlet and, yes, tagging Omnicorp Vibes." "Wait, your personal channel, wouldn't it be better coming from me?" "No. If it comes from you, it looks like an employee grievance. If it comes from your granddaughter, tagging you, it looks like a family defending their matriarch. And it gives us distance from HR liability. It's strategic," she explained, already working fast on her keyboard. "I'm calling the post, Museum Years, Meet the Architect. And we are using the video clip of Tyler's comments as the opening 2 seconds." I watched, mesmerized, as Jasmine uploaded the video. The moment she hit publish, I felt a strange sense of finality. The shame was gone. It had been replaced by the exhilarating terror of having thrown the first punch in a very public fight. "It's live, Grandma," Jasmine announced, her voice vibrating with excitement. "Now we wait 5 minutes, and then we watch the world burn." It didn't take 5 minutes. It took 90 seconds. My phone started pinging uncontrollably. Texts were pouring in, not from my corporate colleagues who were undoubtedly paralyzed with fear, but from my old friends, my church group, and then, immediately, from media contacts I hadn't spoken to in years. Jasmine quickly sent me the link to the post. It was already exploding. The initial reactions were swift and overwhelming. "Shiar. Watchdog. Omnicorp must address this. VP Harper's dignity is non-negotiable. #Fire Tyler. The real CEO. This is how you respond to small-minded bullies. Evelyn is a queen. Tyler is toast. Black professionals. She said what needed to be said. The hair part hit me hard. We are watching Omnicorp." The video views climbed exponentially. 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. It wasn't just going viral, it was detonating. "Grandma, look at the comments. They're using the Museum Years hashtag to share stories of ageism. They're using #fluff to share photos of their natural hair in corporate settings. You just started a movement." Jasmine was practically shouting with glee. Then, the official reaction started. "Grandma, I'm seeing the first signs of panic," Jasmine announced, scrolling rapidly. Omnicorp just took down the original Instagram live video. Too late, obviously, but they're trying to scrub the evidence. "Too late indeed," I muttered, feeling a cold satisfaction. A minute later, my phone rang. It wasn't Arthur. It wasn't my daughter. It was Amelia Jenkins, the Chief Human Resources Officer at Omnicorp. I ignored it. I was on leave, remember? Amelia tried again, and again. On the 4th attempt, I sent her a crisp text. "Please direct all communication through my legal counsel, Arthur Vance." The next call was from the CEO, Robert Miller, Tyler's uncle. Now, that was a call I had to take, if only to hear the panic in his voice. I answered, my voice cool and measured. "Robert, happy birthday to me." "Evelyn, what in God's name is going on?" Robert shouted, his voice tight with desperation. "I am getting calls from the board. I'm getting calls from the press. That video, your video, it's everywhere. Our stock just dropped 2 points." "I imagine that's what happens, Robert," I replied calmly, "when your chief innovation officer decides that public racial and ageist harassment is good corporate content. I believe Arthur Vance. My counsel, I, will be reaching out shortly to discuss the terms of this incident. Evelyn, we are handling Tyler. He has been suspended immediately, pending internal review. We will issue a formal apology to you, personally and publicly. Just please, please take down that video. We need to control the damage." I smiled, a genuine, hard smile that felt good on my face. Control the damage, Robert. That's what I spent 45 years doing for Omnicorp. Now, I'm controlling the narrative, and the narrative is simple: accountability. You allowed a racist bully to humiliate one of your longest-serving executives on a public platform. You reap what you sow. I hung up before he could respond. I didn't need to hear his promises. The time for apologies was over. The time for action had arrived. Jasmine was watching my reaction, her eyes wide. "Did he fire him?" "Suspended, pending review," I corrected, grabbing my tea. "But let me tell you, Robert Miller doesn't care about HR violations. He cares about the stock price. And when the stock price drops because of one person's stupidity, that person is already gone. Tyler is already toast. But we aren't done yet." What else do we need to do? I looked at my video, which had just crossed 500,000 views. I looked at the comments, filled with solidarity and rage. I looked at my reflection. The powerful coils of my hair, a testament to my identity. "We need to make sure the review is public, painful, and permanent," I stated. "And we need to make sure that every company that watches this understands that museum years is a compliment and fluff is a fight. Tyler wanted engagement. We're about to give him maximum engagement." The battle for my dignity was now a global corporate event, and I was holding the microphone. I had gone from crying on the cold bathroom floor to commanding the attention of the internet in less than 4 hours. The shame was gone, replaced by the deep, satisfying burn of righteous purpose. This wasn't just about Tyler anymore. This was about forcing real change in those gleaming glass towers, and I was just getting started. You know, when I hung up on Robert Miller, the CEO, I didn't feel relief right away. I felt this strange, buzzing silence, like the moment right after a massive bomb has gone off and the dust hasn't settled yet. I looked at Jasmine on the screen. She was grinning, but her eyes were darting everywhere, tracking the chaos she had unleashed. "Grandma, you are a national conversation piece," she announced, scrolling through her feed. The Wall Street Journal just published an alert about Omnicorp's stock volatility, citing executive misconduct allegations stemming from a viral social media post. The term museum years is officially crossing over into financial commentary. That is how you hit them where it hurts. I finally allowed myself to lean back in my chair. The cream blouse felt comfortable, and my natural hair, now fully dry, felt light and free. It was a physical manifestation of the mental weight I had just dropped. "Tyler is suspended, pending review," I repeated, tasting the words. "He's fired, Grandma. Robert Miller just hasn't figured out how to write the press release yet," Jasmine scoffed. Suspension is the corporate holding pattern they use when they're trying to calculate severance and draft a non-disclosure agreement, but the internet doesn't wait for HR protocol. And she was right. The momentum was terrifyingly fast. Within the next hour, my phone stopped ringing with corporate panic and started ringing with actual media requests. CNN wanted a segment. The New York Times wanted an interview about ageism in tech-adjacent industries. Good Morning America wanted to feature me on their next segment about workplace dignity. I didn't answer any of them. I was following Arthur Vance's instructions: be cold, calculated, and quiet to the media, for now. I had made my statement. Now they had to process it. But Jasmine was working the angles. She wasn't talking to the big networks. She was quietly feeding information and context to the corporate watchdog accounts and the smaller, more aggressive digital journalists who were hungry for the next phase of the story. Omnicorp is running a classic damage control play, Jasmine explained, holding up her laptop screen. The corporate website now featured a bland statement on the homepage, emphasizing their commitment to diversity and inclusion with a small footnote about an ongoing personnel matter. They want to make this about a single bad apple, a rogue employee, I noted. Exactly, and we can't let them, Jasmine insisted. Your video wasn't just about Tyler. It was about the culture that allowed Tyler to exist for 6 months. We need to keep the pressure on the culture. We need to force them to address the systemic issues, especially the Crown Act principles regarding black hair in the workplace. Arthur Vance called around 5 p.m. He was less amused than Jasmine, but significantly more satisfied. Evelyn, you have managed to leverage a hostile work incident into a public relations catastrophe for Omnicorp on a scale I haven't seen since the early 2000s, Arthur stated, sounding almost proud. The board is in emergency session. Their general counsel has been calling me every 15 minutes, begging for a ceasefire. They know they can't win this in the court of public opinion, and they certainly can't win it in a courtroom. What is the official status of Tyler? I asked. Official status? He was terminated 30 minutes ago for cause, Arthur confirmed. Gross misconduct, violation of corporate ethics, and irreparable damage to the brand. They didn't even offer him severance. They just locked his access and walked him out. The news landed with a quiet, profound weight. Tyler was gone. The boy who had humiliated me in front of the world, who had called my hair fluff, was now just another unemployed 29-year-old with a scorched resume. 45 years of quiet professionalism had just defeated 6 months of loud vibes. Good, I said simply. And what about me, Arthur? What are they offering? They are offering the moon. Evelyn, full retirement package, immediate payout of all stock options, a very generous non-disparagement clause, meaning they want you to disappear, and a large 7-figure settlement to make this all go away, Arthur summarized. They want you to sign the NDA immediately and issue a joint statement saying the matter is resolved and you wish Omnicorp well. I closed my eyes and thought about that check. It was more than enough to secure my family for generations. It was the easy, quiet path. But the easy, quiet path was what had allowed the Tylers of the world to thrive. I'm not signing a non-disclosure agreement, Arthur, I said, opening my eyes. Arthur paused. Evelyn, that is standard procedure in cases this high profile. They want silence. And I want change. If I take the money and sign the NDA, I become part of the problem. I prove that corporate dignity is just a price tag. Tyler is gone, but the culture that allowed him to make those remarks, the culture that demanded my hair be straightened to look corporate, that culture is still running Omnicorp. I took a deep breath. Here is my counteroffer, Arthur. I want the full financial settlement. Yes, but I will not sign an NDA. In exchange for the settlement, I demand 3 things, and they must be public, binding, and immediate. Arthur was scribbling furiously. Go on. First, Omnicorp must publicly adopt and enforce a strict Crown Act policy, protecting employees from discrimination based on natural hair texture or style. It needs to be mandatory training for all managers, starting immediately. That's achievable, but costly, Arthur noted. Second, I want an official, public, and sincere apology from Robert Miller and the board of directors, specifically referencing the ageist and racist nature of the remarks made on December 14th. Not a vague statement about personnel matters. They need to own the terms museum years and fluff and apologize for them directly. That will be painful for them, but necessary for us, Arthur conceded. And third, I continued, my voice firm, I want Omnicorp to endow a substantial scholarship fund in my name, the Evelyn Harper Fund for Executive Development, specifically supporting older professionals and Black women entering or advancing in senior leadership roles. This isn't about money for me. It's about making sure the next generation of relics has a seat at the table. Arthur was silent for a long moment. Evelyn, those are demands for systemic change, not just a settlement. You are essentially asking them to change the foundation of their corporate handbook and donate millions. They will fight the NDA and the public apology tooth and nail. Then let them fight, Arthur. They just lost 2 points on the stock market because of one viral video. They are hemorrhaging clients who don't want to be associated with ageism and racism. They need to stop the bleeding, and I am the only tourniquet. Tell them they have until 9 a.m. tomorrow morning to accept these terms, or I go on CNN, tell the whole story, and file the most aggressive lawsuit you can draft. I ended the call feeling utterly exhausted but invigorated. I had turned my humiliation into a negotiation tool, and the stakes were higher than just my own career. Jasmine, who had been listening to my side of the conversation, started cheering. Grandma, you are incredible. A Crown Act policy. That's huge. That's not just a win for you. That's a win for every Black woman at Omnicorp and every company watching this unfold. We're not done yet, sweetheart, I warned her. They might agree to the terms, but the media coverage is what cements the victory. We need to keep the narrative focused on dignity, not just drama. The next day felt like an out-of-body experience. I woke up to my face plastered on the homepage of Yahoo Finance. The headline was brutal. Omnicorp CEO's nephew fired after racist, ageist rant causes market volatility. Arthur called precisely at 8:55 a.m. They accepted, Evelyn, all terms. They fought the public apology wording, but we held firm. They will issue the statement at noon today, and the official press release about the Evelyn Harper Fund will be out by 5 p.m. The Crown Act policy implementation is already underway. Congratulations. You won. And the NDA? No NDA. You are free to speak, Evelyn. That was the hardest concession for them, but the threat of the lawsuit and the ongoing media attention was too great. They just want you to stop being the story. But I wasn't going to stop being the story. I was going to turn the page. Jasmine flew up from Atlanta that afternoon, arriving just before the official apology hit the wire. We were sitting in my living room, watching the news ticker, waiting. You know, Grandma, Jasmine said, leaning back, the best part of this whole thing is watching the culture shift in real time. People were afraid to talk about this stuff 6 months ago. Now, they're demanding accountability. The official apology was everything I had demanded. Sterile, formal, but comprehensive. Robert Miller, the CEO, issued a statement on behalf of the board, expressing deep regret for the unacceptable ageist and racially insensitive remarks made by the former executive. He specifically apologized to Evelyn Harper for the humiliation caused by the remarks regarding her distinguished career and her hair texture. It wasn't warm, but it was public, and it was legally binding. It was proof that dignity had a price, and Omnicorp had just paid it. The media coverage immediately shifted. The story was no longer Evelyn Harper was humiliated. It was Evelyn Harper forces corporate giant to institute Crown Act policy and endow major scholarship. I was suddenly a hero, a symbol of resistance for every older employee who had felt marginalized, and every Black professional who had been told their natural appearance was too much. Okay, Grandma, here is the final move, Jasmine said, pulling out her laptop. We are going to give them one more piece of content. We need to close the loop. Another video? Not a video, a photo, a professional portrait? We need to replace the image the public has of you, the image of the crying woman in the bathroom, or the stern VP in the sapphire suit, with the image of the victor. We hired a local professional photographer who specialized in corporate portraits. I put on a different, crisper suit, a bright ivory this time, and sat for the shoot. The only constant? My hair. It was styled in its beautiful, resilient coils, totally natural, totally powerful. The photographer worked quickly, capturing the essence of the woman who had just stared down a Fortune 500 company. The final shot was stunning. I was sitting straight, my gaze direct and authoritative, with a faint, knowing smile. My hair was the crown, the ivory suit the armor, and the expression said, "I am not a relic, I am the future." Jasmine uploaded the photo to her channel and mine with a simple caption, "Evelyn Harper, VP of Strategic Partnerships, retired. Architect, not a museum piece. Thank you for the birthday wishes. The fight for dignity continues. #TheArchitect, #MuseumYears." The reaction was instantaneous. The image went viral faster than the response video. It was a mic drop. It signaled that I was done talking about the fight and was now celebrating the victory. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of media interviews, which I handled carefully, always pivoting back to the policy changes and the scholarship fund. I spoke about the deep value of experience and why ageism is a catastrophic mistake for companies seeking true innovation. I spoke about my natural hair, not as a political statement, but as simply my hair, which should never have been up for public debate in a professional setting. I learned that being the architect was far more satisfying than being the relic. About 2 weeks after the incident, Arthur called me with one final piece of information. "Evelyn, I know you don't care, but I thought you should know. Tyler tried to get a job at a major competitor, leveraging his Chief Innovation Officer title. And they Googled him. They saw your video and the subsequent news coverage. They rescinded the offer immediately. They cited concerns regarding corporate cultural fit and public visibility. He is officially untouchable in the corporate world now." I didn't feel vindictive joy, just a quiet closure. He had learned the hard way that in the digital age, shame is a permanent tattoo, especially when applied publicly by the shamer himself. I officially retired from Omnicorp on January 15th, exactly a month after my 67th birthday. I wasn't just retiring. I was moving into a new phase of life as an advocate and board member for several organizations focused on diversity and senior leadership mentorship. My last official act as a non-employee of Omnicorp was attending the press conference announcing the Evelyn Harper Fund. Robert Miller looked pale and strained as he spoke about the importance of leveraging institutional wisdom. I stood beside him, smiling warmly, my natural hair shining under the bright lights. I was the star, and he was just the uneasy backdrop. The next morning, I was sitting at my desk, drinking coffee, looking out at the snow falling gently outside my office window. I was finally free. My phone chimed. It was a text from Jasmine. She had sent a link to a new corporate Instagram account, a fan account, not official Omnicorp. It was called At the Architect's Table. It was a community for older professionals and professionals of color, sharing stories of success and resilience. The featured image, my professional portrait, the one in the ivory suit. The caption read, "Evelyn Harper, proof that you don't retire, you reload." I smiled, a real, full, genuine smile that crinkled the corners of my eyes. I had fought for my dignity, and in doing so, I had redefined what it meant to be a senior executive in the modern age. I was 67, retired, and more powerful than ever. The museum was closed, but the building I designed was still standing, and now I was ready for the next project, this time entirely on my own terms. But the story wasn't quite over. I had taken down the boss, I had changed corporate policy, and I had secured my financial future. Yet, there was one piece of the puzzle still missing, the personal connection, the human element of what this humiliation had truly cost me, and what the victory meant for my family, particularly my daughter, who had watched me sacrifice so much for that corporate armor. And then there was the question of the future. What does a corporate warrior do when the battle is won? I was about to find out that fighting for systemic change is a lot harder than taking down one spoiled 29-year-old. The real work was just beginning. I picked up my phone, dialing my daughter's number. It was time to talk about what we had won and what came next. You know, when I hung up on Robert Miller and finalized the settlement, the silence in my house was deafening. It was the silence of a war zone right after the final shot is fired. Tyler was gone, the policies were changing, and I had secured generational wealth. I was free, but I wasn't peaceful. I had spent 45 years being the strategist, the cool professional who never let her emotions show. And in the space of one day, I had wept on a bathroom floor and then broadcast my deepest pain and strongest convictions to the world. It was exhausting. I picked up the phone and dialed Marissa, my daughter. She lives close by, just outside New Haven, and she had been monitoring the whole ordeal with a frantic mix of pride and worry. "Mom," she answered, her voice thick with relief. "Jasmine told me everything. The settlement, the Crown Act, the scholarship fund." "Oh, Mom, you did it. You really did it." "We did it, sweetheart," I corrected her. "If Jasmine hadn't mobilized the internet, I'd just be another statistic in Arthur Vance's filing cabinet." Marissa was silent for a moment. "I'm so proud of you, Mom. But I'm also angry that you had to go through that you had to be publicly humiliated on your birthday to force them to do the right thing." That hit me hard. Marissa had grown up watching me work. She saw the late nights, the missed school plays, the constant pressure to be perfect. She saw me chemically straighten my hair every 2 weeks for 3 decades because that's what the corporate environment demanded. "I know, honey," I admitted, my voice softening. "I'm angry too. I look back, and I realize how much of myself I sacrificed just to fit into those damn boardrooms. I made myself smaller, quieter, straighter in every sense of the word, just so they wouldn't see the black woman. They'd only see the VP. And then that little boy, Tyler, he went right for the things you had worked so hard to hide," Marissa said quietly. "The age, the hair, the fact that you were different." "He did," I confirmed. I looked down at my hands, which were resting on my desk. They weren't shaking anymore. But you know what the irony is, Marissa? When I finally got the courage to film that response video, when I put on my natural hair and spoke my truth, that was the most powerful I have ever felt. More powerful than closing any 9-figure deal. Marissa laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "That video, Mom, you were terrifying. That look in your eyes, you were done playing their game." We talked for a long time, not about the legal victory, but about the years of tension between my professional self and my authentic self. It was the conversation we should have had 20 years ago, but I was always too busy chasing the next promotion, and she was too busy trying to understand why her mother's armor was so heavy. Now, the armor was gone. After I hung up with Marissa, I walked into my bathroom and looked in the mirror. My hair, my beautiful, stubborn coils, was fully back. I touched it gently. It wasn't fluff. It was strength. It was history. It was the physical manifestation of the victory. I decided right then and there, no more straightening. This was me. This was the face of the woman who had just brought a corporate giant to its knees. The next few weeks were a blur of transformation. I was retired, but I was busier than ever. Retirement, as I quickly learned, wasn't about golf and gardening. It was about repurposing all that institutional knowledge and fury into advocacy. The media wouldn't leave me alone, but I was careful. I only accepted interviews where I could control the message. I wasn't there to trash Tyler. He was irrelevant now. I was there to talk about the Evelyn Harper Fund and the Crown Act policy that Omnicorp was now forced to implement. The fund was my greatest pride. It was designed to provide mentorship, training, and financial assistance to professionals over 50 facing age discrimination, and to young Black women navigating corporate environments that tried to police their appearance. I started meeting the first cohort of applicants for the fund. They were brilliant. There was a woman, mid-50s, laid off after 25 years in marketing, who was told she didn't have the digital native mindset. There was a young Black attorney from Texas who had been told her braids were distracting in court. I sat with them, not as the former VP, but as Evelyn, the architect, the mentor, the woman who had been called a relic. They called me Museum Years, I told them during our first virtual meeting, and I realized they were right. I am history. But history isn't something dusty and dead. History is the foundation, and if they want to tear down the building, we remind them that the foundation is strong enough to withstand the wrecking ball. The energy I got from them was electric. They weren't looking for pity, they were looking for strategy. And strategy, I knew. Jasmine, meanwhile, had become my unofficial chief of staff and digital strategist. She was managing my burgeoning social media presence. Yes, Evelyn Harper now had a professional Instagram account at Evelyn the Architect, and she was vetting the endless requests. "Grandma," Jasmine said one afternoon, holding up her phone, "you've been invited to testify before the state legislature in California. They are pushing a stronger version of the Crown Act, and they want you to speak about the corporate reality." My heart hammered in my chest. This wasn't just a boardroom skirmish anymore. This was legislative change. "Me? Testify?" I asked. I was used to closed-door negotiations, not public hearings. "Yes, you're the face of the movement now. You are the proof that this isn't a hypothetical issue. It costs corporations money and reputation," Jasmine insisted. "This is the moment, Grandma. You took down one company. Now we help change the law for all companies." I spent the next 2 weeks preparing, poring over legal documents, policy drafts, and personal testimonies from other women who had faced similar discrimination. I realized that my victory at Omnicorp, while satisfying, was just one small crack in a very thick wall. The day I flew to Sacramento to testify, I wore my ivory suit and my natural hair, styled impeccably. I wasn't trying to look corporate or streamlined anymore. I was simply looking powerful. Walking into that legislative building, surrounded by cameras and journalists, I felt the familiar rush of adrenaline I used to get before a high-stakes merger negotiation. But this time, the stakes were personal, and the profit wasn't measured in dollars, but in dignity. I sat at the witness table, the microphones close, the lights bright. I looked out at the committee members, mostly men in dark suits, and I saw a room full of people who needed to hear the truth from someone who had lived it. When it was my turn, I didn't read from a prepared statement about legal precedents. I told them the story. I told them about December 14th. I told them about museum years and the implication that my experience was disposable. And then I told them about fluff. When a senior executive, a woman who has spent 45 years building wealth for your state and your nation, is told that her natural hair is unprofessional, that sends a message, I stated, my voice ringing clearly through the chamber. It tells every young Black girl entering the workforce that she must change who she is to succeed. It tells every older worker that their value is expiring. I reached up and touched my hair again, just as I had in the viral video. This is not a distraction. This is my head of hair. Professionalism is defined by competence, by ethical behavior, and by performance. It is not, and should never be, defined by proximity to whiteness or youth. I spoke for 10 minutes. When I finished, the hearing room erupted, not with applause, but with a silent, profound understanding. I had translated the digital drama of a viral video into the language of policy and law. The legislation passed 3 weeks later, citing the Evelyn Harper testimony as a key inflection point. This was my new life, not just retired, but relevant. Yet, even with the victories piling up, the scars of the corporate world lingered. I found myself hyper-aware of optics, constantly checking my posture, my tone, the volume of my voice. I was trained to be perpetually guarded. One evening, I was speaking to a group of young professionals in New York City, talking about confidence and authenticity. A young woman, early 20s, raised her hand. She had beautiful, bright red box braids. "Miss Harper," she asked, "how do you deal with the fear? The fear that even after all this, someone will still try to diminish you, that they'll still see the color or the age before they see the competence?" I paused. I had just given a 90-minute speech on exactly that topic, yet her question cut through all the polished advice. "You don't get rid of the fear," I told her honestly. "The fear is real. It's what keeps you sharp, but you change what you do with it. For 40 years, I let the fear of being diminished make me conform. I let it make me hide. After December 14th, I decided to use the fear as fuel. I looked straight at her. I realized that if they're going to diminish me anyway, I might as well give them the full, unvarnished Evelyn Harper to diminish. And trust me, the full version is much harder to ignore. That was the truth. The humiliation had been the catalyst for liberation. My relationship with my daughter, Marissa, deepened in ways I hadn't expected. She saw her mother not just as a high-powered executive, but as a fighter, a flawed human who had finally broken free. She started asking me about my childhood, about the early days of my career in the 70s, the real history, the museum years that mattered. Jasmine, my brilliant granddaughter, was thriving in the role of my media guru. She had taken the initial shockwave and turned it into a sustained movement. She was constantly reminding me that the digital world was a double-edged sword. It could humiliate you, but it could also amplify your truth faster than any traditional PR campaign. "Grandma," Jasmine said one morning during our weekly strategy call, "I've been tracking the Omnicorp comments. The narrative is shifting internally, too. The younger employees are furious at the silence from management. They fired Tyler, but they haven't adequately addressed the culture that created him." "What are you suggesting, sweetheart?" "I'm suggesting that the Evelyn Harper Fund is a great start, but we need boots on the ground. We need to go back in." I raised an eyebrow. "Back into Omnicorp. I am happily retired." "Not you, Grandma. The fund. We need to create an internal mentorship program, run by the fund, that operates inside Omnicorp, focusing on executive training and bias awareness. We use their money to fix their problem, from the inside out." It was audacious. It was brilliant. It was exactly the kind of strategic partnership I used to live for. I called Arthur Vance. "Arthur, I have a new term for the Evelyn Harper Fund's endowment agreement. I want to mandate that Omnicorp must collaborate with the fund to run an annual, mandatory, high-level mentorship and cultural awareness program for all VPs and executives." Arthur sighed dramatically. "Evelyn, you are retired. You won. Why are you still trying to manage their business?" "Because, Arthur," I replied, looking out at the world that was waiting for me. "Winning the battle means nothing if you don't occupy the territory afterward. I need to make sure that no other woman has to cry in a bathroom on her birthday because some boy called her professional hair fluff. I'm not finished building." Arthur reluctantly agreed to draft the amendment. Omnicorp, still desperate to control the narrative and prove they were serious about change, agreed to the terms within a week. They had no choice. Evelyn Harper, the relic, had just become their permanent internal cultural auditor. I was 67, retired, and the CEO of my own destiny. The humiliation had stripped away 40 years of corporate conformity, leaving me with nothing but raw strength and undeniable purpose. The fight had been painful, public, and necessary. But the victory wasn't just mine. It was a blueprint for others. And as I started planning my next speaking tour, focusing on resilience and the power of authenticity, I knew one thing for certain. The museum years were truly over. Now, it was time for the architectural masterpiece. The foundation was set, the walls were strong, and the roof was high. And the woman who designed it was finally ready to move on to building something truly lasting. But before I could fully embrace the future, there was one final, deeply personal piece of closure I needed to address: the public image of the woman Tyler had tried to break. I needed to ensure that the image of Evelyn Harper was permanently etched as a victor, not a victim. I needed to control the final frame of the story. You know, the thing about winning a war isn't the moment the enemy surrenders. It's the quiet aftermath when you realize you've changed forever. I had secured the settlement, forced the policy changes, and watched Tyler's career dissolve faster than cheap cotton candy. But the biggest victory wasn't financial or legal. It was standing in my own skin, finally free. I had spent weeks wearing my natural hair, and it felt like wearing a truth I had kept locked away for decades. The straightened hair was armor designed to deflect corporate scrutiny. My coils? They were a crown designed to command respect. Jasmine knew that the physical change needed a final, public stamp. She was adamant that the last image the world saw of Evelyn Harper, the corporate warrior, couldn't be the woman crying in the bathroom or the stern VP. It had to be the architect. That's why we organized the final photo shoot, the professional one, with the ivory suit and the fierce, steady gaze. We used the image everywhere, on the press release announcing the Crown Act policy, on the official launch materials for the Evelyn Harper Fund, and as the profile picture for my new advocacy accounts. The photo wasn't just a picture, it was a statement of reclamation. It showed a woman who had been humiliated for her age and her race, and who had stood up and demanded not just justice, but systemic change. My hair, shining under the studio lights, was the ultimate rebuttal to fluff. My expression, calm and powerful, was the final answer to museum years. I had officially retired, but my life had never been busier or more meaningful. My days were now filled with leading the Evelyn Harper Fund, consulting on diversity initiatives, and preparing for speaking engagements. I was no longer trading stocks. I was trading wisdom. The fund's first cohort was incredible. I was mentoring that young attorney who had been told her braids were distracting, and the marketing executive who felt obsolete. I was teaching them the real language of the boardroom, not the jargon Tyler used, but the language of strategy, resilience, and self-worth. Your experience is not a relic, I told them during one session, repeating the mantra I had finally internalized. It is the most valuable asset you own. It means you have already survived storms that the younger generation hasn't even seen yet. Never let anyone tell you that your survival disqualifies you. The true weight of the victory settled in a few months later, during a routine dinner with Marissa and Jasmine. We were sitting in my kitchen, eating takeout, the kind of comfortable, messy family scene that 40 years of corporate climbing had often prevented. Marissa looked at me, her eyes soft. "You seem lighter, Mom. You really do." I smiled. "I am. Carrying that corporate armor is heavy. You don't realize how much energy it takes to pretend to be something you're not until you stop." Jasmine, ever the strategist, was scrolling through her phone. And the best part is, the change is sticking. I was talking to a friend who still works at Omnicorp. She said they had mandatory, all-day training last week on the Crown Act policy. And guess what the required reading was? I shook my head, intrigued. "Your testimony to the state legislature," Jasmine announced with a triumphant grin. "They literally had to listen to you, the relic, tell them why their culture was broken. And the new mantra around the office isn't vibes, it's competence. They're terrified of another Evelyn Harper moment. That was the real victory, not the money, but the forced, uncomfortable shift in corporate consciousness. I didn't just win a lawsuit. I changed the internal vocabulary of a major corporation. A few months later, I received a small, unsolicited package in the mail. It was a beautiful, custom-designed plaque, sent anonymously, simply addressed to the architect. I opened it. It was made of heavy mahogany, shaped like a small foundation stone. Engraved on it were 2 words, Museum Years. But beneath it, someone had added a small quote, "A museum is where you store things of irreplaceable value." I laughed out loud. The internet, the same cruel place that had broadcast my humiliation, had also become the collective conscience that validated my worth. They had reclaimed the insult and turned it into an honor. I placed the plaque on my office bookshelf, right next to the framed photo of me in the ivory suit. It was a constant reminder of the day I hit rock bottom and the day I stood up to build something new. I am Evelyn Harper. I am 68 now. I am retired, but I am an executive mentor, a board member, and a legislative advocate. I wear my natural hair every day. I still wear sharp suits, but now they fit me, not the role I was playing. Tyler is a footnote. Omnicorp is paying my bills and funding my mission, and I am finally genuinely at peace. So, if you ever find yourself in a meeting, being told you're too old or too black or too much of anything, remember this. Remember the power of your truth. They can call you a relic, they can call your hair fluff, and they can try to erase you from the narrative. But if you stand firm, if you use your voice and leverage your experience, you will find that the only thing getting erased is the very culture that tried to diminish you. The fight for dignity is never over, but let me tell you, it's a beautiful thing when you realize you have the tools to win. And I, Evelyn Harper, the architect, I'm just getting started.